Right, today we're going to talk about two more terms when it comes to angle pair relationships. One of them is called a linear pair. It's two angles that form a line. Linear line and pair, that's two things. And they add to 180 degrees like all lines do. So you could also say that those angles are supplementary. So if we have a line, and we're told that points A, B, C, points A, B, C are collinear, which means they form a line. That means if we have angle 1 and angle 2, angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. And when we're writing proofs, what we would write, our conditional statement would be if two angles are a linear pair, then they are supplementary. Okay. And then the next one, next definition is vertical angles. So they are two angles opposite one another at intersecting lines. So what that would look like is if I have two intersecting lines, and you have angle 1, 2, 3, 4, the ones that are across from each other are congruent in their vertical. So angle 2 and angle 3 are vertical angles, and angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical angles, and they are congruent. So angle 3 and angle 2 are vertical, and angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical. And then the wording for this proof, if two angles are vertical, then they are congruent. And you might be able to use, you'll be able to use the symbols for angles and congruent, so you're not writing as much. So if you look at example number 1, we're going to tell whether these angles are vertical, or linear pair, or neither. So if we look at angles 1 and 2, here's angle 1, here's angle 2, they form a line, so that is a linear pair. Angles 1 and angle 3, okay, so those are across from each other. Those are vertical angles. And then angle 1 and angle 4, well, they form a line as well, so we call that a linear pair as well. Okay, so then we have angles 4 and 5. Here's angle 4, and here's angle 5. They're not across from each other, so they're not vertical angles. They don't form a line, so we would say that that is neither. Angle 4 and angle 2, however, are across from each other, so that is a pair of vertical angles. Okay, so then we're going to look at angles 5 and 8. And 8. Those are neither because they're not across from each other and they don't form a line. Okay, then angles 5 and 7. Now you may say, well, it looks like they would form a line if they were rotated and put together, but we don't know that for sure. There's nothing in this figure to tell us that angle 5 and angle 7 would make a straight line. So neither. Angle 5 and angle 6, though, those do form a line, so then that is a linear pair. Now, if they would have told us that angle 6 and angle 7 were congruent, then for G, we could have said that angle 5 and angle 7 form a linear pair. But they didn't say that, so we can't assume that to be true. Right, in example number 2, we're going to assume that the measure of angle 4 is 63 degrees. And we're going to find the measure of angle 1, 2, and 3. So the measure of angle 1 is going to be 180 minus 63 because look, we have a straight line here. We have angle 4 and we have angle 1 that form a line. So if we do 180 minus 63, that gives us 117. So this is 117 degrees. The measure of angle 2, well, angle 2 is vertical with angle 4. So those are the same measure. So this will also be 63 degrees. Now for the measure of angle 3, so we know that this is 117 and this is 63. You could say, well, angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, so they must be congruent. So angle 3 must also be 117 degrees. So let me erase this to do part B, because part B is now saying that the measure of angle 3 is 121 degrees. What's the measure of angle 1, 2, and 4? So the measure of angle 1 and 3 are vertical. So angle 1 is 121 degrees. Now to get the measure of angle 2, we have a line now. This line here is formed by angle 2 and 3. So we can do 180 minus 121, and that gives us 59. And then angle 2 and 4 are vertical angles, so the measure of angle 4 is also 59 degrees. So there's only two different numbers here in this type of problem. We have the vertical angles that are congruent, and then the other set of vertical angles that are congruent. All right, on this page, what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve both letter B's, and then I'm going to pause the video and have you solve and try the letter A's. So in letter B, our direction is saying find the value of x. So these two angles are vertical angles. That means they are equal to each other. So we need to set up the equation 4x minus 18 is equal to 3x plus 4. And then we'll solve that. We're going to subtract 3x from both sides. That gives us x minus 18 equals 4. Then we will add 18 to both sides, and that gives us x equals 22. This question is not saying to plug x back in, so we can leave our answer just like this at 22. Then, for example, for letter B, we have two variables. We have x and y. So I'm looking at these two angles for x, and those are vertical angles, so they are equal to each other. So 9x plus 2 is equal to 10x minus 7. And then we'll solve that. Subtract 9x from both sides. We get 2 equals x minus 7. And then add 7. We get 9 is equal to x. Okay, so that's finding x. And then these two angles here are also vertical angles, so those two angles are congruent. So we'll do 18y plus 25 is equal to 9y plus 61. And we'll solve this one. We're going to subtract 9y from both sides so that we get 9y plus 25 equals 61. Subtract 25 from both sides. 9y is equal to 36. And then divide both sides by 9. Y is equal to 4. Okay, so I want you to try letter A in both examples. I do want to caution you in number 4a that, yes, you can say that these two angles are congruent, that 4y is equal to 9x plus 5, but you have to figure out what x is first. Well, these two angles here form a linear pair, so you would have to add these angles up and set those angles equal to 180 once you add them up, because they form a linear pair. So that's my hint. And then once you find x, you can plug it into the second equation. So pause the video and try these two problems. And once you're done, unpause it, and we can see what you got. All right, so in letter A, for example, number 3, these two angles formed a line, so you had to add them up and set them equal to 180, and x is 17. And then letter B, I got, letter A, for example, 4, I get x equals 7, and then I plugged that in to get y equals 17. So we're not going to do this proof down here, so this is where we're going to stop. So I hope that this makes sense. The big takeaway here is that vertical angles are equal, they're congruent. So if you have the angles that are across from each other, set them equal to each other, and then the angles that form a line add up to 180. So you got to take those two angles, put a plus sign between them, and then set them equal to 180. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you smash the like button and subscribe.